Hey guys, what is going on? It is Ando, and this video is for the Set 18 DC analysis, shopping list, whatever. It is basically where I looked at the DC stats, the level 3, level 6s, and level 9s, and I'm going to come up with some of the best ones that I could come up with. As always, though, there's plenty more that I'm probably missing. And this one, I will say, was a bit confusing. There were some things that I wanted to like that I didn't really like. There were some things that I didn't want to like that I was like, I could see this working out potentially. So, yeah, take all this for, it's a list to start you on essentially. But I wanted to get this out before Conquest, which should be starting today or whatever day you guys are watching this. So yeah, let's get into the actual set itself. So a few things with the set stats here. So typically when I look at the stats, I usually try to say, all right, what is CG trying to incentivize us into getting? And in this case, I would say, right, we have 320% potency. That is the highest. After that, we've got 210% crit damage and 10% tenacity. And then from there, we kind of see like, I don't know if there are lesser numbers than they normally are, but just seems like a little bit smaller numbers than normal, especially after we've seen like, the 350 plus percentages on defense and stuff like that, right? We've got health, we've got protection, we've got critical chance, and we've got health steal. Again, just kind of paints a picture of what exactly we're looking for here. I will say also, I did not do a set analysis for set 17. However, I noticed that the last time I did this, set 16, I had to put in an additional column. So that means that there's actually more chance to getting something else that you probably don't want. As opposed to set 16 where it had less stats variation. So you kind of had a better shot at landing at something that you did want. All right, I'm going to try something new this time because they didn't give us the post and all that other stuff. And I had to kind of change the legend of the color. So if you guys see any legends where the meta is like a darker green, it just didn't really show up well on this. So I'm going to try to show you guys, what I would be looking out for as far as, the level 3s, level 6s, and level 9s, right? Like these are the ones that are like, if you get this is definitely one that you should feel okay continuing to upgrade. If you start to not get some of these, right, like it's kind of a little bit like up to you if you want to do the re-rolls, if not, whatever. But again, just trying to point you guys into the right direction on this. So for the light side, I really do like this inflict debuff on the enemy. They deal damage to 2% of the enemy's max health. It's not that great. Like honestly, like in most cases, I would actually say this is like probably your niche use. Maybe like in between meta and niche use. There's a few teams that really, really like this. But the end of the, for me at least, the other ones just truly aren't very good. And light side is kind of a tough one sometimes to kind of get a gauge on again. So I'm not, some of these I might be being a little bit too hard on. But I just didn't think that this set was really good with light side potential. And we'll go a little bit more into that later. But the next two that are kind of like below meta, but, above niche, I would say is, all right, yeah, you got protection up for 2 turns, right? It's nice to start that up. There's certain teams that like, buffs can kind of really help you out. Okay, and then the next one is, when light side allies gain a buff, they recover 2% health and protection, right? Again, you think of guys like GMY or Padme, for those that still run, like OG Padme. And it's like, all right, all those health up and protection ups, and even Queen Amidala, right? Like all those are going to help regen everything. So the ones that like I was not that, so I didn't know. I said better than nothing on the light side. To turn for at least 3 buffs that can't be dispelled, they gain tenacity up, right? I put that as better than nothing because honestly, like by the time they've already gotten 3 debuffs on you, yeah, like tenacity up has already kind of failed. Now, yeah, you could make an argument like, okay, but what about now, I guess, essentially, but there's always such thing as potency, tenacity down, and there's also dispels and shocks that would seemingly prevent this. So again, just feels like that's just not really going to be used. And then the light side specials, those additional buffs there, I wanted to really like this just because it's kind of meta for dark side teams, or at least one dark side team. But I just don't see how this fits into a team. I don't know. Maybe you guys are more savvy with this, and maybe you guys can come up with something. But for me personally, I did not find anything that I could feel like, oh yeah, like that's gonna be the game changer here. Okay, so for light side or L3 on the dark sides, right? Our meta ones for me specifically, I love bulk. Anytime I see bulk, you can guarantee that I'm going for it. The 15% max health and protection for dark side allies, I think that's phenomenal. And then also the dark side allies use special abilities that gain 15% Terminator. That's also really critical and important. That can really just TM boost a lot of teams into to higher tiers than they are really. The other one that I said is kind of, in between, a rung below meta, but in between that and niche, right, is I do think that the dark side tank defeated does serve a purpose. I do think that it's actually quite good, especially if you're talking about things like Malgus and stuff like that, even like Lord Vader, for instance. Those are all pretty solid teams that those go up against. And then, I think in the niche tier, we've got Darkside gain plus 10% turn meter, and then just better than nothing, right? Like, I guess some health recovery, right? When you critically hit an enemy. And you can see just the difference here between light side and dark side, right? Like, I really do think that dark side has more capabilities this set around. So, and then we'll go on to this. So Mercenary, it's very important as well. This is also a dark side, right? So even though Mercenary has tons of light side characters, you're going to start off with a dark side L3. If you have a L3 that's not dark side, you're not going to get this. So again, kind of furthering how many times we're going to use dark side crons this time. So, all right, here's the thing, right? I put this long text one as meta. But the thing is that I think most people are only going to be able to use one team with this. And if you have the one team that's going to be used with this, I'm assuming you're also going to get Balon, who also will have his cron that will go along with this. So it's not probably necessarily for you to roll, so to speak. But yeah, that one I think is probably going to end up being the meta one for them. The other one that I could also see being really meta for other teams outside of Balon's mercenaries here is when they use a special ability, they're going to stun the target enemy for 1 turn, right? This is kind of what the play on, the Jedis that we've currently had. We've seen this before as well. And then, in between that and niche, I said, hey, when they inflict a debuff, they're going to deal, bonus damage to 10% of the enemy's max health. If you look at some of the mercenaries on that list, right, this is where I think Dash comes in. This is where like a lot of characters I think can actually use this still too. And then just because I've always liked this, and it's kind of probably like a glass cannon build, but I do always like the gaining offense with the 400% of the current defense. I really just didn't know how to kind of, recommend this retribution. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be really good. Maybe not. But that's where we got for mercenaries. For UFUs, we've seen this long text before. It's really good, right? Anything that has UFU in it is pretty much going to be this long text. If you don't get that though, I did say that the niche one would be if you defeat an enemy, you take a bonus turn, right? Especially in territory wars, like GI can instant kill a Jedi as long as they got 6 stacks of purge on them, right? So then you take a bonus turn, you can kind of get that going there. The other one that I was thinking about this one was, okay, Cat's an unaligned force user, so maybe there's some way that you do your force sleep and then you want to keep cycling turns and maybe get to a faster ult. That's definitely a thing. And then better than nothing, right? Ufu allies starting with damage immunity for 2 turns is not bad. It can be dispelled, but you know, it just gives your team 2 turns where they just can't really be hit. So not too bad. Okay, so Old Republic is interesting. I'm not an Old Republic guy. You know, I know some people have their Karth and their Zalbar and their mission to like relic 9s each. It's not me. I didn't really actually see one. In fact, in many cases, I thought, wow, maybe you get for the Karth team. The problem with Karth team is that you have to go all the way through the light side, right? On L3, L6, and then get the Karth Kron. But in some cases, I would even argue that the mercenary tag actually might be just as good. You know, you're highlighting 3 different characters there that could potentially fit into the mercenaries, right? Even though it'd still be an OR team. But yeah, the biggest one for me, I think, was when the Old Republic allies target another ally during their turn. They both gain 5% defense, max health, max protection, offense, stacking until the end of the battle. The reason why I think this one's good, right? Yes, Jedi Knight Revan lead, right? Like he's got that special buff. You can pass it in between. And understand this, when you select someone with, you know, Jedi Knight Revan swap or Basila's buffs or something like that, like let's just say you're swapping to GMY, right? That 5% defense and max health and max protection goes to both Revan and GMY, right? So that's always a good thing, right? Especially Jolie's got a target ability. Like I said, Basila's got one. Jedi Knight Revan's got one. And then obviously Jedi Knight Revan's lead has all that. But here's the really cool thing. If you're using JML with those guys or any of the Old Republic, right? The JML lead will also, the coin, you know, will also count as this as well. So you can get to a pretty strong character, depending on if that, you know, JKL, JKC, whoever. So I said that's meta for Old Republic. I think that's probably the best in slot. But right now, Jedis have their Kron, so it's going to be sort of like what happens after this. Okay, so here's kind of some top seasonal picks for me. All right, so up above, we got the teams, and then down on the columns, or I guess down on these rows, we've got essentially what is the L3, L6, and what some recommended stats are. They're going to sound repetitive, but here we go. Inquisitors, I think, you know, go with the dark side bulk for the 15%. Allies, you know, max health, max protection. Go with the long Ufu text. Like I said, if you want to, you can go with that kill, or it might work in the interim. But yeah, I think, you know, I think long Ufu is probably the best way to go. And GI is the best level 9 for the Inquisitors. I would say for stats, go protection or crit damage. The only reason why I said crit damage second is because, you know, a lot of times we use Reva Inquisitors to kill JMKs. They can't crit until, you know, all the bonus protection's gone. So it's like you don't really feel it. But crit damage absolutely helps if you're trying to kill something like Jabba, all those other things. Okay, EP Mara SK. Now, again, I'm going to go dark side bulk here, but I could also go special 15% TM. Dark side bulk only really will benefit, right? The core 3, the other guys are sort of not that. So, you know, you're not going to get as much stats. So the special could also work here. Again, go long Ufu text, nothing crazy. I think SK is better. The attacker Kron has made us realize, I think, how good attacking a second time can be, especially now that you're going to attack for more damage. But I think Mara's is also very good. And I would go with crit damage here or potency. For Seer Ufu, definitely go. You know, again, kind of hit or miss here. Dark side bulk, I think, is pretty good. Again, depends on what your team comp looks like. And then or the special TM, I think that's pretty good as well. Can also think about maybe a dark side tank revive. Definitely go long Ufu text. If you're doing the thing where you combine your Ufu with SK, which I think actually in this scenario there might be some merit to as well. You know, I think SK is probably better. You'll get your ultimate fast, you know, all these other things. But Malicos is really good here too. I would also go with CD, crit damage, or protection. So Karth OR, again, this is a very weird one. I don't really know exactly how we're going to go about this, but I think we're going to do light side 2% per debuff, like their damage. And then I said maybe health and protection recovery. I don't know. This is where it feels like I really want a mercenary one where you get the 10% per debuff as well. And then the Karth level 9, and then you'll get, I guess, crit damage and protection as well, just so that way because Karth kind of always is recovering protection. For Jedi Knight, Revan, Bastily, or Jolie, any team with them, or preferably all three of them, you won't be able to use the light or the L3 because that's not going to, apply to them because it's going to be dark side because it's mercenary. Actually, no, I take that back. I should have put something else in here. I guess I've mistaken this. But this will definitely be your 5% health and protection when you select them. I say Jolie if possible, just because it kind of helps keep a TM train going. Protection if you're running them with JML. If you're not running them with JML, protection can still work, but crit damage also would be a fine choice here. For Maul, if you're, I think pretty much any build of Maul here, I think you're going to want to use the dark side 15%, the bulk, and then go Ufu long text here, right? You're going to be hitting people with a lot of debuffs, especially if you're using it with Lord Vader. Reducing their max health would obviously help you. Go with the Maul here. That's really, really awesome. That's a really good one, especially because a lot of people are trying to get Maul out quick. So yeah, go with protection. Most Lord Vader teams are built off of protection because all of it kind of transfers over to health, which then all transfers over to like damage for Maul. But unless you're running Maldos, like if you don't have Lord Vader, go then with health. And then Sortie, right? Light side, 2% health and protection per buff, right? I think that's probably what I'd go with Jedi Knight Revan, Bastila, and Jolie. I don't know. We'll see how that ends up. I would also go 5% health protection, offense, defense here, just because the droids do actually have quite a bit of ways to select the other droids. And then Sortie's level 9 is actually really good. If you have a built-up droid team, this is going to be pretty interesting to see. And then I'd go crit damage, right? I think Sortie laying out that AoE, I think is going to be pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to call this the spicy picks. I don't know if there's any that are really spicy. But yeah, so the first team that I thought of here is First Order, right? Dark Side Bulk, 15% allies, long Ufu text. Now, I will say this. This is going to be a little bit controversial because I think there's some TM gains here, which will eventually pick away at your team. But I actually think that this still might counter. Now, you might want to go with the 15% TM on First Order, but I think it might still counter the Great Mothers, which is kind of like their calling card right now. But yeah, I give them health and crit damage personally. All right, so here's the one that I was thinking of earlier. So Jedi Knight Cal Kestis, he's not going to be able to use the level 3 because he's not dark side, or he's not going to be put on a team that uses dark side. So, but you can use the level 6 since he is a mercenary. So if you get the stun on special, he's constantly doing specials. So you can kind of pick and choose where you want to stun. Might be pretty helpful. If you're going just a regular team, I would say crit damage. But if you're going to use him with JML, you might as well get him with some protections to help that JML leadership hit for harder. Dash, again, not applicable because he's not really a dark side guy. Now, you can put dark side scoundrels on there and whatever might work out. We could talk a little bit later on the L9. But you're going to want the Merc, I think, debuff, right? Because he's just been constantly spitting out debuffs. Or the stun on special. Again, a lot of specials being thrown out there. Not a bad call. And then for level 9, potentially Dengar. I could see Dengar actually being really good here. I could also see, obviously, Hondo. And then if I were you, I would go crit damage or protection here. For Bosk, I could see this being really kind of niche, but also kind of sweet as well. Bosk with tank revive or a bulk or special TM. If you get the debuff, 10% or stun on special, I think those will obviously all be pretty good. And then Dengar, right? I think his grenades actually is going to hit somewhat hard. I don't know. We'll see. And then also protection on that, just to kind of feed into the Bosk lead. Can't see these last two because my face, but Aphra, I think Dark Side Bulk 15% is great for her. She just survives a little bit longer and lets you do some stuff. I think the stun, the Merc stun here makes a ton of sense. I also like the idea of a glass cannon just giving, you know, characters a little bit more offense here. We'll see though. I don't know. Again, it really doesn't affect too many people outside of her. Actually, you know, Dr. Aphra. And then I said potency and CD for that. And then Jabba, right? Dark Side Bulk, 15% allies. And then Merc, I think special stun or even maybe retribution, although I'm not as convinced on that. If you look at who's kind of in the Jabba team, right, you could see that it's mostly for the Mercs, it's mostly going to be Chrysanthemum and Embo. So I was kind of thinking, what if, you know, this might help Embo in TW, right? Everyone's got that Embo Kron or Embo Ami. Maybe that retribution ends up helping dispel a few of your tanks early on, and then like Jabba kind of does Jabba things, right? I don't know. We'll see. I would go tenacity and crit damage here just because tenacity, the team starts to really fall apart. It feels like once they can't actually do their specials. And then the other thing is crit damage, right? Those thermals will end up hitting pretty hard whenever you actually have a lot of stacking crit damage. So anyways, that covers it for the DC analysis set 18, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you guys in the next one.